Welcome to another episode of CEO Insights, the series where I delve into the minds of business leaders shaping India's financial and corporate landscape. I'm your host Radhakrishnan Chonat, and today we are joined by Vikas Satija, Managing Director and CEO of Shriram Wealth. With over 27 years of experience spanning banking, wealth management, and asset management, Vikas has been at the forefront of building businesses at some of India's most respected institutions, from helping launch HDFC, Reliance AMC to spearheading Kotak Mahindra Bank's private banking and affluent businesses. Now, as the CEO of Shriram Wealth, he is leading a new chapter for one of India's most trusted financial groups, combining digital innovation with deep client relationships. Let's explore how he's approaching wealth creation in a very fast changing India and what's driving investor behavior today, and his larger vision behind Sriram Wealth strategy. Welcome to CEO Insights, Vikas ji.
Thank you so much, RC. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's really nice to be part of this podcast, and I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Excellent. Vikas ji, let's start with your 3 decades plus journey across banking, asset management. If I were to ask you, what are some of the key lessons from those early years that have shaped your leadership style at your current role? And what has been your biggest, if I were to ask you, mindset shift when moving to Sriram Wealth?
So, RC, let me start from 1998 when I started my career. It's been 27 years. I started into the asset management business, and if you go back to 98, 99, in the asset management business, there was only one large player which the country knew, and which was UTI. For right or wrong reasons, but as one would say that the private sector was still coming into at that point of time. So it was 93, 94 when few of the private sector came in, but it was really 2000 when it started taking off. So I was part of the HDFC and Reliance both journeys while they were setting it up. While we used to go out and meet the investors at various points of time, it was extremely difficult to explain to them and say what a mutual fund means. What are the units of mutual fund which one has to look at? What does an NAV means, which is a net asset value? How would you invest and what would be the price and what determination it will get to? So it was extremely a different experience. And I can tell you it was a great learning experience for me, because while we were meeting investors, we were telling them, saying that mutual fund is not where you are saying that you're just buying into stocks, or you're buying only into corporate bonds, or you're buying into government securities. Every scheme has an objective. So technically, you're buying into those objectives with a long-term goal. So that from that point of time to where we are today, industry, the way it has grown, it was a 1 lakh crore industry at that time. We are talking about 75 times growth into that. So that's the kind of growth which this industry has got. I think investors have evolved over a period of time. They've understood that when you say an NAV of 10 rupees doesn't mean it's the IPO price of 10 rupees. It means that at 10 rupees, you do make investments into the funds, but that's the unit value. The underlying assets will have its own set of values which to be looked at. So I think that's how the whole industry has become, and people have to look into it. From mutual funds, then I moved into the private wealth side, and then the affluent business, which I did with Kotak. So the first two stints was with HDFC and Reliance. And then I moved into the private wealth and the affluent segment. One of the personal reasons which drove me towards that side was because I wanted to move from manufacturing to the client facing side, where I wanted to sit next to the client and talk about it rather than being on the manufacturing side of it. And that was one of the reasons it prompted me to look into it. I think as far as the private wealth industry is also concerned, I think it's come a long way. You go back to I think it was few bankers and the IFAs, as the term would say, that they were the ones who were leading this business. Over a period of time, you've seen a lot of professional managers coming into it, and the industry has evolved. Again, if I want to just put some numbers to it, this industry is close to around $1.2 trillion, which is getting managed as far as the wealth industry is concerned. So coming from 2005 to 2025, where we are sitting, as I mentioned to you, it's around $1.2 trillion. We have a GDP of 4 trillion plus, and $1.2 trillion is what the surpluses are there, which are getting managed on the wealth industry space. You had another question to ask on the leadership side of it. I think at very early stage of my career, I had the opportunity to start managing teams whether it was in HDFC, then in Reliance, and then I had the opportunity in doing Kotak. I think one thing which I learned over a period of time, and I think that's what has worked at least for me, is very clearly that you need to have a participative as well as democratic leadership style, which works the best. And that's what has worked for me. So even today, when I sit in the boardroom, I think it's always the people around you who have to come down to put a strategy together. And then you point and say, hey, this is the strategy. All of us agree in this room and go. So I think from a leadership point of view, every leader has a different style and approach. For me, I would specifically say I think participative and democratic is what has worked for me. Though for execution, I still believe sometimes you may need to get autocratic. At times you have to think like that. But for decision making, from strategy point of view, I think it's the participative approach which has worked for us and worked for me in person. So that's what I want to say and put across on the leadership side.
Interesting. Participative as well as democratic style is your leadership style. There was one data that I was quite fascinated about. You said 1.2 trillion is the assets, in India that are managed by various, wealth management firms. And you also mentioned you decided to move in for a customer facing role. So how has been the shift that you have seen in terms of more people coming into financial asset investment? Even now when I talk to my aunts and uncles, it's all about real estate or gold, mutual fund, sahi hai, everything they know, but there's still that reluctance. So how have you seen this shift in mindset, and what are sort of curious questions that you keep getting from prospective clients of yours?
So, RC, you are right when you say that real estate still holds a very, very large portion of the HNI and the UHNI segment. If you go it, and I think it's to do with because these were real assets. So you would see gold and real estate being a larger chunk in the HNI, UHNI. But as the industry has evolved, and as I was saying, around $1.2 trillion, which is getting managed by the wealth management industry today. If you look into it, mutual fund, 1 lakh to 75 lakh crore. AIF, PMSs, you get into debt side of it, which is corporate bonds, get into other deposits. I think clearly the industry has evolved over years, and you've seen that more and more financialization happen. The best example to that is a SIP. And I give this example to everybody that when I started in 98, 99, it was very difficult to explain what does a systematic investment means. Today you have 29,000 crores which goes every month. And look at what depth it has created. The best part to look at is that the net flow of the FIIs this year has been negative and your markets have still been holding high. And I think it's more to do with because of the depth what is created through the financialization. So clearly, I think uh, investors have evolved. It's over a period of time that people are wanting to get into financial assets. And clearly, that's the roadmap going forward. So that's what one is looking at.
Very interesting. Coming to Shriram Wealth, no, it sits at the intersection, I believe, of trust, technology, and personalized advisory. And you recently have tied up with Sanlam Group, which comes with its global expertise backing you. If I were to ask you, what unique edge do you believe Shriram Wealth brings to its clients?
So let me put it like this, RC. I think just to take a step back and say where is the industry currently at. See, today professional wealth management is only at 15% in India. Vis-a-vis when you look at the same data globally, the same numbers could be anywhere between 60 to 75%. Now, that's the kind of upside which one sees into India coming in, and more people wanting to embrace this fact that we need professional wealth as we need doctors, as we need profession from a lawyer, somebody from any other profession. Similarly, we would need wealth managers to come in there and help people to build portfolios and work on that. As far as Shriram Group is concerned, we are a 51-year-old group. If you look at Sanlam, it's more than 100 years there. What both of them stand for is very, very clear. Trust and legacy. I think these are the two synonymous words which one would call that they have been there together, and that's how it is. Both the groups are there. So what we have done in this particular venture is very clear. Shriram and Sanlam have come together. What we are providing to our clients is not products. We work on solutions. So I think what differentiation what we want to create in the industry is let's see if RC is looking for investment opportunity. what are the solutions available, rather than going to RC and saying, RC, I have one product which is in this category and this is best suitable for you. I think that's the biggest change we want to bring about. As far as technology, like you were talking about, I think technology has to aid. So there is a human capital which is important, and technology has to aid from convenience point of view, from making life more efficient and better, rather than replacing the human capital. So very, very clearly from our point of view, we are building in technology which is aiding human capital to be far more better and far more effective to manage investors' wealth.
Very interesting. Aiding technology to aid investors. You mentioned about how far the wealth management industry is coming and the scope for it to expand. Now, if I were to ask you, what are the biggest untapped opportunities that is holding the industry back, and how do you think the customer demographic in India is going to evolve and understand the requirements that they need to manage their wealth professionally? So, where do you see 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line?
So, Arzi, if I put a simple data in Mixed Bharat data, if you've seen, the data tells us that over next 20 years, a 4 trillion GDP would be a 35 trillion. If I put the same data and I say, how would the wealth industry evolve? The same 1.2 would be looked at, estimated to be a $10 trillion. So that's the kind of industry which we are going to see coming in. Clearly, I think India is at the cusp where you'll see India growing at a faster pace, and so is the wealth for every individual to go. Again, another data point, and it's an interesting data point I was reading in one of the researches. If you look at in the billionaire categories in the world, we are third in terms of ranking. When I look at 10 million plus surpluses which individuals will have in terms of financial assets, we are fourth in the world. When it comes about $1 million plus, we are 14th. Whereas when I compare the same data to our GDP, we are fourth in the world. So there's no reason that you will not see the same 14th coming it to mean and maybe resorting it to a data which will give a high growth. So clearly you'll see a lot of millionaires getting coming into India. And I think we've seen just a starting phase to it. And you will see more and more of that happening as the time progresses. So there's a huge opportunity as far as wealth industry is concerned. I think what is holding us back is having the right talent. I think the challenge what one sees is that not that we don't have talented people in the country, but with the kind of investment opportunities which are building up, I think we need more and more those talented people moving into this industry working with each of them, training them and making it sure that how we can have more people into this side of it to manage. So I think the biggest challenge with the industry will face is how do you get more and more talented people coming into the wealth industry and managing investor portfolios and taking it to the next level. I think that's the biggest challenge which I see today.
Very interesting pointer, that it is the talent that is holding the industry back. Now, if I were to ask you in terms of, do you see, I don't know whether you even see it as a competition, there are these new age fintechs, the direct platforms, at least from the Gen Z or the millennial crowd, whereas wealth management is traditionally seen as more like a person to person business. Are you tapping that sort of a demographic, or are you right now targeting the HNIs, UHNIs who traditionally would have gone the real estate? So help us understand who needs Shriram Wealth service.
So RC, let me categorize and say there are three sets of customers which one would want to categorize in the wealth space, and that's what we have done for Shriram Wealth. So there's one category which I would call 10 lakh to 2 crore, which is the emerging affluent, is where the number comes in. 2 to 25 is typically the affluent and the HNI space, which one could say. And 25 crores plus would be the ultra HNI, as one would say. We have already launched a proposition, which is 2 crore plus. So we're catering to HNI and UHNI. If you go by into the data and go into research, I think, as I mentioned in earlier statement, saying that very candidly, you need to have human interface. Along with that, a digital interface would be great for aiding and making it sure that the advice becomes even more better. Portfolio analysis becomes better. It helps to onboard at a much faster track record. So clearly, I think as far as technology is concerned, it would aid in this. But when I go to the emerging affluent and the new generation as what you were terming as, I think we would need to look at from a DIY platform. So for our 10 lakh to 2 crore segment, which once we launch in future, we are very clear that we want to spend a lot more there on the DIY journeys. Another data point for you. If you look at today in the industry, and this is what we did a survey just before we were looking into as far as launching in which space. Today, 33% of the industry needs physical. The next 33% says, I need physical plus digital. And the next 33% says, I need completely digital. So two-thirds still believes that you have to have a physical presence. So I think we are on that trajectory where we are of the same believer that I think physical and digital together would be the one which one would work around.
Very interesting data point. Okay. The data speaks volumes in itself. Interesting.
Correct.
Little bit segueing. You said talent, right? Talent will expand this industry. So, from a CEO's perspective, how do you ensure that you're instilling the culture or the client centricity, which brings in the trust that the client needs into your team? So, what's sort of the training, I would say, or the belief systems that you will instill in the wealth managers?
So I say first thing which we have told to every member of this team is work on solutions, don't work on products. If you are able to go through a detailing of an investor to understand his goal, do his risk profile, and then provide a solution basis his need, I think we have achieved what we have set ourselves to achieve. Because very clearly, the problem, as I mentioned in the earlier statement, is that the industry is all being product. What is the best product? What is the best stock? What is the best deposit available? And one wants to go, yes, we have to underline and move into that side. But I think first thing is, what does RC need? What is RC's goal? Can I understand that better, provide in the right solution? Within that solution, there'll be various asset classes, there'll be various products which I will come into it. But I think that's the biggest change we need to make. So as far as the team at Shriram Wealth is concerned, I think one simple message which I've given to the entire team, and all of us follow that judiciously, is work on solutions. Understand the need of the investor and work on solutions.
Very interesting. Don't sell products, work on their solutions, understand or tailor make solutions for each individual investor or customer. So if I were to ask you, shifting gears a little bit, from a personal journey perspective, you almost 30 years in the industry. So what keeps you motivated? You have had a long and successful career. What keeps you motivated? What gives you that motivation to find new solutions? So give us some insights into your thought process.
So one of the reasons when I moved from asset management to the private wealth and the affluent businesses which I set up in my previous firm, and then we started up this private wealth venture here, was I love to meet investors. These are promoters at various places. They are professionals who are doing well in their industry. The kind of experiences which you get to know by meeting them is amazing. I can tell you the biggest kick I get is when I go and meet some of these people and understand their personal side, professional side, their experiences, their business models. It is amazing. The more and more people you meet across the country, you learn every day something new. Even till date, whenever I get time, I make sure that between me, my wife, Kate, all of us sit down on a dining table. And actually, without naming investors, we discuss in terms of look at this business model, how they've created, what has been the past about it. And I think that's the most important thing which keeps me going. So every day when I have to go in the market, meet different set of investors, I think that's the key which keeps me going, at least for sure.
Wow, what an insight! Yep, no podcasting itself, gives me the
Mm,
opportunity to meet interesting people like you. Uh,
correct.
Excellent. If I were to ask you, what are your sort of mantras for life as well as for professional side? Imagine you have 20 young recruits coming in, joining your team, or to your own kids, as you mentioned. What would be not gyan? I would say, what would be some sort of an advice you would give?
This has been my personal belief, and I think, RC, I've always told this to my team. I think two things one needs to imbibe from day one: hard work, and make sure that keep increasing your knowledge quotient. If these two things you are able to get on track, rest everything can be imbibed. So people may say, oh, this guy is more talented, the other guy needs know things better. He comes from a background where his understanding is more. Everything can be taken in. in the stride if you are ready to put in that extra effort and make sure that you are learning on a daily basis. I think these are the two mantras which I've given it to my daughter. I have imbibed myself, and I can tell you I share this with my team on a regular basis that I just keep these two factors going, rest will fall in place.
Wonderful. Hard work and staying curious. Before I wrap up, this is a question that I ask every guest in my show. If I were to ask you to maybe three books that you as a business leader found very useful and probably would gift to someone, what would those three books be?
I would follow only one book. Jack Welch has written one book called Winning. If you have read that, it's fantastic. And that gives you just the crux in terms of what is required in life, personally and professionally. I think if you go through that book, as Jack and Susie both have put together this book, I think that's the mantra which I've followed, and I really enjoyed that one.
Brilliant, brilliant recommendation. Because it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you, picking your brain, and getting to understand Shriram Wealth and the market in general. Thank you, and I look forward to more such interactions in the future.
Thank you, RC. It was really nice interacting with you. And as you said, I think nothing is better what you do today. Meeting different set of people and learning on everyday basis. So it's a great thing to look forward to.
Thank you for agreeing for this, and look forward to catching up. Thank you.
Thanks, RC. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.